Hello and welcome back to Politically Incorrect. I'm Tom Christiano. Well, tonight we have an outstanding panel of state and local leaders on the show, and we're going to talk about local, state, and national issues. With me tonight we have Senator Mike Barrett. How are you, Mike?
I'm terrific. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being on the show. You know, it's been 5 times already. This is your 5th time on the show, and you just were elected senator last month, right? For the 2nd time, I mean, but
I'm
recently.
doing nothing else but go on your show. Actually.
Yeah.
It's working, though.
Well, it's wonderful. Plus, you're showing up to many of our local events in Chelmsford, and I see you at so many things, Mike. It's so wonderful. You're very nice to everybody that you come in contact with, as all of our local representatives and selectmen are as well.
Thank you.
And thanks.
I'm enjoying it.
So, any quick committees that you're on that you might want to mention or something like that?
For me, it's children, families, and persons with disabilities.
Oh, yeah.
The Human Services Committee writ large. I'm Senate Chair of that, and I'm Vice Chair of Labor and Workforce Development, which includes a lot of economic policy for the state.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for being here again, Mike. I'm looking forward to this discussion of all these
Me
topics
too.
we have tonight. We have so many. It's going to be fantastic, I think. Of course, that's a subjective judgment, and the viewers at home may disagree, but we'll see. And we also have my good friend, State Representative Jim Arciero, with us tonight. How are you, Jim?
Well, thank you for having me on. How many times is it now?
This is your 10th time, Jim, so now you're in double-digit territory.
We finally reached that plateau, and it's been about, 2 shows per year on average, right?
2
It's been
to
about
3
5
sometimes.
years.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's amazing. Because you've been a state rep, what, 5 years now?
Yeah, a little over 5 years.
5, so,
It's
so
amazing.
it's averaging about
Yeah.
2 per year. Wow.
It's wonderful. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, yeah, it's great having you on the show, Jim, and you're a good friend of mine, and we love talking about politics on the phone sometimes.
Certainly.
Which is great. And any committees that you're on, Jim, that you
I'm
might
on
want to
the
mention?
Committee on Higher Education,
Oh, wonderful.
the Committee on Revenue, and the Committee on Veterans Affairs.
Nice. Well, you must have been very busy yesterday on Veterans Day,
I
right?
certainly was. I had events in Littleton and in Westford.
Wow, nice, nice.
So it was a busy weekend.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here again,
Happy
Jim.
to be here.
I'm looking forward to everything that we discussed tonight.
Of course.
Along with my good friend, Selectman Janet Askenburg. How are you, Janet?
Good, how are you?
Good, and this is your 9th time on the show, Janet.
Wow, catching up.
Yeah,
right,
and
that's right.
one more.
I'm
it'll
going to be
double,
here next month, too.
Oh,
double digits.
Of course.
So, Janet, as everyone knows, is a selectman here in Chelmsford, or selectwoman, whichever. Which do you prefer? Either
Selectman's
way?
fine. I'm not
Selectman's
hung up
fine?
on that.
Either
yeah.
one? And you were on the school committee for 3 years before that,
That's
twice
correct.
as chairperson. Any other committees that you'd like to mention, or anything you'd like
I was
to?
on the Economic Development Commission before I was on the school committee, and really enjoyed that. So I feel
And
like I just really haven't stopped. I've just been kind of volunteering over the years, but I love it.
Oh, wonderful. And I don't know how you do it, too, given that you're a principal of the company that you work for. It's a national company, and you're often flying to Texas or Chicago, driving down to, what was it, New Jersey you went a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, I have a lot
See
of
Chris
clients
Christie,
in New York and New Jersey.
who we'll talk about tonight.
Okay.
So that's how you keep so busy, and you have your family, too. And
Well, it
that's
helps
wonderful.
to have someone at home. As you know,
Yeah,
Bill's a stay-at-home dad, so that helps tremendously.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thanks for being here again, Janet.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Well, first topic I thought we could ask the state senator to update us on is domestic violence bill that I think was recently proposed or passed or something.
Well, we've had a number of domestic violence statutes over the years. The issue, unfortunately, expresses itself in different ways, and the legislature tries to respond. This time we're doing something interesting, and Janet and Jim will find it interesting. We created sick leave for those who are found to be victims of domestic violence. It's traumatic, God knows, and we wanted to create a little time for people to gather themselves and to give them some sort of protection. The legislation is not very prescriptive. It's companies of 50 or more people have to offer up to 15 days worth of sick leave. Companies 49 people and below aren't covered by this new law. And the sick leave that the larger companies offer can be either paid or unpaid. So this is really, we're just getting our toe into the water. It's not very heavy-handed in terms of what we prescribe for companies, but we're trying to create the principle, which is that if you're hit literally and figuratively hard by adverse events, there should be some opportunity to recuperate just as if it were a medical condition.
Yes, I see what you mean, yes. Well, thank you very much for working on that very important issue, Mike.
Thank you.
By the way, how do you like being back in the Senate? This is your second tour
Well,
in the state Senate,
yes,
right?
I did this once 8 years before, in 1987 to 1995, 18 years, and then I was in the private sector for that intervening time. Yeah. The place has actually gotten better, and there are a lot of places in the last 20 years that have gotten worse.
Oh,
I
that's
think
great.
the state Senate has actually become more internally democratic. There was a legendary Senate president back in the day who wielded authority with a heavy hand. He's gone, and things are relatively benign and inclusive and participatory now, and so I'm really enjoying myself.
Great. Well, that's wonderful, Mike.
Yeah.
So you're going to be running for re-election? Well, that's not for another 3 years, right?
Well,
Is it?
it's like Selectman and certainly like state rep. On the state level in the legislature, as Jim knows, we run every 2 years. So it
Every
seems
2
as
years,
if one is
yeah.
always, it does keep you accountable, though.
Certainly does.
Yeah.
You
Certainly
mentioned the
does.
fact that I'm showing up all the time. Well, I'm scared stiff. You'd show up too.
There's only 2 ways to run, right? Scared and unopposed.
Well, I tell you, Mike, for you to win that election with all the opposition you had that time, very high qualified people.
They were.
In fact, I hosted a debate.
That really annoys me.
Yeah.
They
And I hosted a debate on this show, remember, Mike?
were, and it was terrific.
And it was-
all kidding aside, it was a great race and a great field.
Oh, it was a great field, and for you to come out on top, it says a lot about you, Mike. So congratulations again on that big victory.
Thank you very much.
Gee.
I was the
Thanks.
oldest person in the field.
No.
Well, thank you. Well, thanks, Mike. So, Jim, I was wondering if you could update us. I guess you're working on a high-tech tour in your area, in your district now?
Yeah, certainly I am. You know, I represent the towns of Littleton, Westford, and Chelmsford. And the 110 corridor, starting really from Littleton all the way through Westford and into Chelmsford, has really become a mini high-tech mecca, if you will. Yep. And it's just been a wonderful experience over the last 4 years to really create this sort of public and private partnership for necessary infrastructure and incentives to not only attract businesses to the 110 corridor, but also to help them grow.
Yes.
And so this essentially is going to be, I have it slated for January 10th. And it's going to start off sort of kicking off this tour to showcase these wonderful high-tech businesses and the great innovation that we have and the synergy we have between the public and private partnerships that we've created throughout my district. It's going to be exciting. We're going to be partnering with the Mass High Tech Council and the Associated Industries of Massachusetts to not only, like I said, showcase these great partnerships, but also to, create a dialogue and a conversation. So we know how we can both assist each other moving forward. So
Wonderful. Wow.
and it all starts sort of in Littleton with transportation. When I first got elected in 2008 and taking office in 2009, we sat down with IBM. IBM in Littleton is the largest software lab in North America. IBM's headquarters is in Littleton. There's about almost 3,000 employees there. Sat down with an open source software company in Westford called Red Hat. Sat down with companies like Juniper and NetScout in Westford, and also Kronos in Chelmsford, the largest employer in Chelmsford. And one of the biggest issues was transportation. How do we get these young people who are graduating from BU, BC, MIT, Harvard, et cetera? How do we get them to the suburbs, if you will, 35 miles out from Boston into the suburbs of Westford, Littleton, and
We have that
Chelmsford?
issue in Burlington.
Certainly, and basically what they said is right now there's no reverse commute for the Littleton MBTA station to get these young people here at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. So working with Congresswoman Tsongas and the delegation, Senator Jamie Eldridge, and the State House delegation in the region, we came up with a plan to do something called a reverse commute, which would be called double tracking. And now we have a brand new MBTA station in Littleton. We have this double tracking in place, and now we're actually getting folks to come in from Boston to our region, to the 110 corridor on time. It seems like a trivial thing, but if you can imagine, it was one of the biggest topics that we heard from these large corporations and large businesses in our region. And so it all starts with that. It all starts with getting the employees, the young, energetic, innovative young minds from Boston, from our great institutions, into the suburbs to help move forward with technology, move forward with job growth.
Wonderful, Jim. Wow.
So it's exciting. I'm pretty excited to do it, and it's been long overdue. As Senator Barrett said, it's one thing after another, and Janet, you know it too. We're always running. We're always going to meetings. And sometimes just scheduling these things becomes burdensome and difficult, but we're excited.
Yeah, and Jim, I see you at so many events too, and you speak at almost every Eagle Scout award ceremony in Chelmsford and Westford, and probably Littleton too, right? Which keeps you going like every Sunday afternoon or whatever, right?
Sundays at 3:30, I believe.
At 3:30, I know. That's wonderful. So I wore
Well, I
my
have to
Eagle
say, you
Scout
are an Eagle
pin
Scout.
in favor, because every time you're on this show, I wear my Eagle Scout pin.
Yes.
For you, yeah. So it's a great thing that you're doing. But I wouldn't want to attend all those ceremonies so personally. But so that's a great thing that you're doing there,
Well,
Jim.
thank you.
It shows leadership. You know, you're letting them know about your life and how you became a state rep, et cetera. What a wonderful thing it is to become an Eagle Scout. So all of that is great. And plus, I see you at many, many town events and things. You were recently at the Senior Center, I think, with
Yeah, with the
some of the other
delegation, with
reps,
Senator
the
Barrett
delegations,
and the other 3 representatives.
Nice.
It was a great event, and we tried something a little different this year, Senator. In the past we did the barbecues, and this time we tried desserts, which was nice as well. But we thought maybe Fridays after 12 is probably the best time. I think people want to get moving. But
That was a lot of fun.
It was great. We had a
Good.
great time.
Good. Well, nice, Jim. I'll get back to you with some other issues later on, of course. And
I have a
but
quick question for Jim.
yeah.
Do you mind?
No?
Please.
So with the high-tech corridor, how's
Yeah.
that going to benefit Chelmsford? Are you going to swing it around to?
We are. It's actually, we talk about, in my district, obviously, it's Chelmsford as well. One of the biggest pieces that we were able to work on in terms of infrastructure in the high-tech corridor, and the high-tech corridor, of course, will go down to Billerica Road and to Chelmsford. Kronos.
Yeah, that's why I was saying it kind of swings
Kronos
around.
is the largest employer in Chelmsford. And one of the biggest issues that we worked on last year was actually getting the proper infrastructure to have both campuses meet in terms of a
Right.
safety light and a crosswalk.
Yep.
And it became that this project, which was a little over $1 million at the time, if it wasn't put forward in the actual advocacy wasn't combined with the efforts from the local level, that Kronos was thinking about leaving.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is one of the projects I think that you had a public and private partnership working right and getting the necessary infrastructure to not only have Kronos, the largest employer in Chelmsford, stay in Chelmsford, but grow.
Right. Okay.
So
That's cool.
Well, Janet, I was wondering if you could update us on what's going on with that grinder pump topic, which is one of the biggest issues in Chelmsford right now.
Yep. If everyone goes out on the website right now for the town of Chelmsford, you'll see that we're forming a grinder pump study committee. It's going to be comprised of 9 folks, and this is per town meeting, fall town meeting. And we're accepting applications right now. The deadline is November 26th. And then at the Board of Selectmen's December 2nd meeting, we're going to be appointing members to that. And per town meeting, it's going to consist of 1 DPW representative, 1 FinCom member, and 1 Sewer Fairness Alliance representative. But that's a minimum. I know at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, we had talked about, especially George Dixon had talked about, having 2 Sewer Fairness Alliance folks. So we'll see based on the applications that come in, what who'll be on the committee. But we're really looking for some expertise and a broad range of folks to serve on that. And then they'll come back with recommendations to Springtown meeting for there to be a vote. So looking forward to getting that meeting together, and we can hopefully do something for these folks and provide some relief.
Wonderful, wow. Well, that's great, Jan. I'm looking forward to the Springtown meeting to see what you all come up with, or the committee, what they come up with. A 9-person committee, right? Something like that.
9-person, yes.
Great.
I'd be interested. It would help me, although Jim probably already knows this. I'd like to know the nature of your business work or your consulting work.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't realized you were from the business world.
Yeah, the firm is Ryan. We're a corporate tax consulting firm, and we're actually the 7th largest corporate tax consulting firm in North America.
Wow. Are you a CPA by training, or?
I'm a principal there, and we have about 1,600 employees around the world, about 56 offices now.
That's very impressive.
Thank you.
And Janet's a very good friend of mine, too. We talk about politics all the time, right, Janet?
Yeah, my
Mike, you
professional
gotta
life's nothing. It's about our friendship.
And Mike, you've got to start calling me once in a while. We can talk politics.
Well, I guess so.
You're the only one.
I'm getting the message.
Yeah.
You're not his best friend?
I like his paintings.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm always liking you on Facebook.
I appreciate
Well, then
that.
there you
I
go.
appreciate
That's
it.
half the battle.
That's half the battle, right, right. Well, since we have a couple of people in the State House today, and somebody's very interested in this minimum wage topic, I wonder if we could quickly talk about that, because we have a lot of topics to talk about.
Sure.
But I'd just like to quickly summarize what's going on with that. The mass minimum wage here in the state, I believe, is $8 still
It
at the
is,
present time. The highest in the country is in Washington State at $9.19 an hour. The highest in New England is Vermont at $8.60 an hour, not too much more than Massachusetts. But California recently voted to increase their minimum wage, but it's going to be an escalation.
It's in increments, right?
In increments,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's not going to be huge by any means. But also, this is from massbudget.com, by the way. I found some information relative minimum wage. And you know, inflation adjusted, today's minimum wage is 25% below what it was in 1968. So in
Amazing.
real terms, for some reason, we have minimum wage 25% lower. Yet productivity has increased over all those years. If we adjusted minimum wage just for productivity growth, it would equal $19.77 today.
Wow.
But we haven't been doing that, obviously.
Right.
And finally, I just want to quickly mention, if we increase the minimum wage the same way we increased CEO compensation since 1989, the minimum wage today would be $18.42.
Right. So you've got that widening gap between pay for the folks at the top and everybody else.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I think about, Tom, is that you want to. I think teenage kids are a special category. They don't need to be able to earn enough to pay the rent necessarily if they're living with their parents. But once you get into college and you're supporting yourself, and of course once you're earning the minimum wage and you're even older, ideally the minimum wage would enable you to buy food and to put a roof over your head.
Yes.
The minimum wage should enable you not to get rich and not even arguably to live a middle-class life, but it should enable you to avoid being poor. If you're working 40 or 50 hours a week, you shouldn't be living poor.
Yes.
And so I favor a reasonably aggressive increase in the minimum wage, not enough to bring us up to those numbers you're talking about, not enough to really seriously narrow that gap with high-paid executives.
Yeah.
But I do think, I favor raising it to $11 an hour, with special provision for part-time kids who are working after school. I appreciate that there you don't want to raise it so high that you deny them work. But if I'm working 40 to 50 hours a week in the hospitality business, then, and there are some implications here, I think I should be able to support myself, pay the rent, and eat myself.
Yes.
That does mean, though, because none of this stuff is free, it does mean that the cost of eating out or of using the results of the hospitality business go up for the rest of us. There's certainly, it's not a free lunch, it's a more costly lunch. But I don't see how you can justify paying people minimum wage if in Massachusetts terms they then can't afford to live here.
And they can't, as we all know.
And so it's a controversial thing, but I would like to see us go part of the way toward getting back to 1960 terms. We can't get all the way back. Inflation's advanced too much. This is an expensive place to live, but I'd like to see us over time, not in one fell swoop, go from $8 to $11.
And then adjust to inflation afterwards? Maybe we should have done that all along, but...
Well, we need to, at some point, we need to plant our flag and then enable people to, but realizing again that this is going to cost the rest of us in terms of when we eat out or even when we go to a grocery store, it's not going to come cost-free.
Yes.
Well, but if it's more money to go to the grocery store, those folks that are now making $11 an hour, they're going to need $12 an hour. I mean, at what point does it stop? I mean, I hear your argument, but again, it's about the implications of it.
There are real implications. There are implications either way. You keep people poor, which is what $8 an hour does now, and that has implications. They can't afford to shop at the places where they work.
Yes.
And so those places have less business. So the nice thing about the minimum wage, and I'm talking to three people who really know their economics, is that as a practical matter, all the money gets spent almost immediately and gets recirculated back into the economy. So it's not as if people are taking their money and using it to go on vacations or to save in their IRAs. Down at the lower end, every additional dollar I make is probably going to go immediately to someone else in Massachusetts to whom I pay rent or from whom I buy groceries. So the money keeps sloshing through the economy. It doesn't wind up out of state, which is different than the earnings at the higher end. A lot of that money gets spent, either puts into saving or gets spent out of state on the sort of vacations we love to take or the sort of luxury goods we like to buy.
Yeah.
And there's actually more pump priming and more economic stimulus paying people at the bottom a little more.
Oh, yeah.
Because all their spending tends to be local.
Yes.
Now, I know this is one of the arguments, but are you concerned at all that, let's say as a business owner, I'm going to have less positions. I'm going to be hiring less people because I need to pay them more.
It's a good point, but I'll tell you what the economic studies show, because as you can imagine, the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston and all manner of economists have addressed that question because it's a very serious one.
And I've seen studies on both
Yeah.
sides.
By and large, it's not a one-on-one cost. In other
Right.
words, if I raise the minimum wage, it doesn't cause you proportionately to reduce hiring. There certainly is a trickle-through effect, but interestingly enough, on balance, when you raise the minimum wage, because you're empowering me to spend my money on a local business probably or wherever I need, it doesn't cause businesses to say, you know what, I'm going to have to lay off somebody to accommodate. There are some economic effects, but it's not as drastic as you would think.
It may be for every 8 positions, you may have 1 less position.
Yeah, I think that's probably, so
Right.
on balance, I think it works. But you're absolutely right, Janet, that, well, like I say, nothing comes for free.
Right.
I think
There's
one of the
always an
topics that
implication.
the Senator sitting on the Labor and Workforce Development Committee, and what we've heard in the State House over this last year, especially when the minimum wage has come up, is the pieces of legislation that I've heard recently is a phase-in of over 3 years to $11,
Yes, absolutely.
but also linking it with unemployment insurance reform. Something I've talked about on the show before, I think we have to have a serious and adult conversation about. You know, essentially, if we were to right now,
Are you having non-adult conversations about it?
well, I think we do tend to kick things down the road in Beacon Hill sometimes, and I think this is something we need to address. And right now, we're the only state in the country that provides 30 weeks of unemployment insurance. The rest is 26 weeks.
Yeah.
By actually tweaking that and moving to 30 weeks and looking at duration and benefits, and right now, I think if you had 15 weeks in a position of a job, you can be eligible for unemployment insurance. And the study that the Mass High Tech Council had put together, it said something if you had changed that to 20 weeks and changed 30 to 26, that we'd be able to, over a 10-year span, pump about $4 billion into wages and look towards 10,000 new jobs, not to mention something along the lines of $35 to $40 million into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now this, I think, Senator, we're starting to hear a little bit more of this reform linked to minimum wage. Have you heard that on your end?
I have, and I think you're got some foresight there. I think the two are going to get linked. I don't know what the details are going to be like, but I think you're absolutely right, Jim. The interesting thing about the unemployment compensation fund is that it's entirely business money.
Sure.
This isn't taxpayers' money that what they pay in gets paid out or doesn't. It accumulates.
Exactly.
And there's some indication in a recovering economy scenario that we may be accumulating a little more than we need, and that we could ratchet down. The devil, again, is always in the details, but I think he's onto something.
And we've seen actually in the last 5 years that I've been in the legislature freezing the rate in order to help businesses grow instead of reforming it. And I think a lot of businesses have been eager to see some reform, especially uniform it to the rest of the country. And I think linking both of them, or at least having that discussion about both of them, I think would be appropriate.
So is that what's going on in the State House now? You're having discussions about minimum wage and the linkage, et cetera?
There have been, but you know, obviously
Yeah.
more intimate discussions, I think, in the Joint Labor Workforce Development Committee.
I mean, just one sort of general observation about the legislature, which the good news is that we're not a very reckless crew, and that relatively little major legislation comes out of that place in any given 3-month quarter, right? In fact, if anything, one thing that struck me compared to my experience of 18 years ago is that the legislature and I think on balance it's a good thing, has slowed down. For when I was last there, every calendar year was its own complete legislative session.
That's right.
So one had to have hearings in the spring, report out bills, and enact them into law, or you start it all over again, which wasn't very efficient. Now we have 2-year legislative sessions like Congress does, and it's possible to kind of stretch things out and be a little more thoughtful. And so while it's frustrating that things have moved more slowly, one hopes the result is more is better.
Yeah.
Well, here's my whole thought on the minimum wage hike, and I think this is all a discussion now, because I believe because we've lost so many jobs to overseas, not only outside of Massachusetts, we've lost them out of Massachusetts, but we've also lost them obviously as a country overseas, that having the job at McDonald's and Walmart is the new middle class job. So what we're trying to do is make up for the fact that, you know, Bob no longer works in a manufacturing or a distribution plant making $18 an hour, and he's at McDonald's making $7.50, $8 an
Right.
hour, and he can't pay the bills, even though he's working, you know, 50-hour
Right.
weeks.
That's a good point.
So while I think, you know, it's a good thing to study, I don't think that addresses the problem. I think that's a Band-Aid. The problem is we don't have real paying jobs here. I think we have the people working at McDonald's and Walmart, and then you have people working at the high tech, at the biotech companies. You're either a scientist or you're flipping burgers, and there's not a whole lot in between. And by raising the minimum wage, you're trying to bridge that. But I think that's a Band-Aid. The real problem is we need to get those jobs back.
I'm a pro Band-Aid guy. I'm fond
See,
of
I like to
I'm
address
fond of
the
Band-Aids.
actual problem, though.
I'm fond of Band-Aids. But that said, there's no question that if I could solve the larger problem in a reasonable time span, I'd rather go there. I'm not
Right.
sure we're going to address that in the next 3 to 5 years. We have to start tooling away, or we have to continue, I should say, to tool away. In the interim, if you're bleeding, Band-Aid can do wonders.
And Janet, how would you address that problem that you're mentioning, the larger problem of
Well,
employment?
Well, first I would elect a president that would focus on that and actually get it done. Second, I would elect a governor that would focus on that and get it done. Look at Massachusetts first, look at the country as well, and get those jobs back.
How do you think they would do it? Because they aren't the
Well, we have-
employers, they're the government.
but-
so
but
how
also-
would you suggest that they
When
do
I
it?
look at tax rates around the world, and I work with a lot of companies, and a lot of my clients are some of the biggest companies here in Massachusetts, and I hear of them, you know, they're investing, and they're not investing here in the United States. They're certainly not investing in Massachusetts. As a matter of
is that?
fact, I have quite a few clients that are leaving Massachusetts
And why is that, Janet, do you think?
because they're getting better incentives. I have one client who's a major financial company here in Massachusetts, and 700 positions just left Massachusetts here recently. Half of them went to Texas, half of them went to North Carolina. And the reason for that, you know, there's a lot of economic reasons, but a lot of it was, you know, they're just being hassled by the state. They didn't feel like Massachusetts even appreciate the fact that they're here.
Well,
And-
that's, I mean, there's no question
and let me tell you, Rick
yes.
Perry is making those calls saying,
Right.
come on down to Texas, and he's making it worth their while. And these aren't real high-paying jobs. These are middle-class jobs in.
Well, let's take a look at. First of all, I want to see Rick Perry run for president because I want the national media.
I don't think he should run
I
for
want the national media to penetrate those numbers that he's blowing smoke with. And the truth is, the educational attainment of folks in Texas, their public schools are the worst of the 50 states, and that's going to play a lot in terms of Texas' economic future as well. Texas is doing well economically because they've got fossil fuels. They've taken energy out of the ground, and right now, and this is a good thing I think for the United States, we're moving toward domestic production. We're less reliant on foreign production, and he's lucky to have natural gas and petroleum, but they're not doing well in terms of the sort of high-tech jobs that Jim and Janet have been talking about. They're not competing with Route 110 outside Austin, Texas. The economy of Texas actually is very uneven. I've spent some time there. Huge poverty rate, many more poorer people as a proportion of their population than is true in Massachusetts. And as we know, Massachusetts somehow, despite being a high-cost place, because of the terrific public schools, and I give Janet credit for serving on the school committee, and I give Jim a lot of credit for caring about higher ed here, we have managed to keep the unemployment rate either at the national average or below for how many months in a row?
Many.
You know, we're doing, crazy as it sounds, we are doing something right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the places with whom we compete for work, and one thinks of Finland, one thinks of Scandinavia in general, have higher tax rates. Germany, more taxes, higher levels of unionization. So you leave Asia out of the equation, where they're really good at exploiting people, and of course, until their factories collapse on people's heads. And you take the rest of the world with whom we compete, Northern Europe, for example, the tax rates there are often higher, the social safety net's often better. I'm not saying we have to go there, but Massachusetts is doing something right. I heard NPR again today, but although this is a familiar factoid that we often hear mentioned, that this country does very poorly compared with Asia when it comes to achievement in math and science, except for Massachusetts. Massachusetts as a state is competitive with Hong Kong and Singapore. It costs money, and that's money that I know Janet has spent wisely as a steward of that lucre when she was on the school committee. But Massachusetts is a world competitor in terms of with all its costs. Not true of Texas. Texas is a third world country in terms of its educational achievement. Massachusetts is first world, and that's pretty extraordinary. I'll give Texas those third world jobs. I'll keep the first world jobs for this state, and for as many as leave, others are coming in. Jim is seeing expansion on Route 110, not contraction. Now, there are lots of things we have to do to keep 110 happy, Route 110, I mean. But
companies' jobs are leaving, and that's my concern.
No, that's not true. Statistically, we are not losing jobs. That's why the unemployment rate stays low. Anecdotally, we're losing jobs, but we are not losing jobs net in the state. In fact, we are a job creator.
What kind of jobs are they, though?
Are
these all these Burger King jobs and Walmart? Not saying those are bad jobs, but my concern is, and again,
no, it's life sciences jobs, it's healthcare jobs, it's jobs in higher education.
I see them leaving,
the
and
better
it concerns
paying jobs,
and we're not going to get them back because someone's not going to leave those incentives down in Texas. I certainly hope they do, and I'd love to see where we can
here's where I want to work
back.
with Janet. I want to bring the middle income jobs back. We do exceptionally well at the high end. Texas does exceptionally well at the low end. That's where the burger flipper jobs go. They go to Texas, unless you're in fossil fuels. What we have to do is bring manufacturing back to Massachusetts, and that's what Jim's been working on. We've got to bring the middle income jobs, the jobs that once supported the middle class. You don't do that by competing with Texas on poverty. You do that by focusing on higher ed, focusing on decent public schools, and of course, focusing on some things that we do poorly here. We need to house young people. We need to enable them to get out to Littleton and Chelmsford, and then eventually to move to Chelmsford.
But we need to
Littleton. So we got some real work to do. Don't get me wrong.
But we need to convince these companies, and honestly, I think a lot of these companies have a bit of a sheep mentality. If you can convince the larger companies to come back from Ireland, to come back from overseas, and bring their manufacturing back, then the others will start to follow.
What I love, I used to represent Cambridge in the state senate before I moved out to Lexington 18 years ago. What I now see is Microsoft moving into Kendall Square, Novartis moving into Waltham, Facebook moving into Kendall Square, Google expanding its footprint in Cambridge. Those are jobs for people in Chelmsford and elsewhere, of course, even if we have to commute toward the city. So what I don't see, I see a lot of problems. We haven't talked about climate change yet, but what I do want Massachusetts to do is I want it to resist the tendency to emulate Texas, and I want us to be a better Massachusetts. Educate kids, but to your point, to Janet's point, make sure that we don't drive businesses batty. Now, I haven't heard specific examples of where we're driving businesses batty. It's kind of a rhetorical device pulled into a lot of conversations, but I assume that it's real at times.
It's not rhetorical.
And we have to find a way to lighten up on unnecessary regulation and make sure that the businesses here aren't frustrated.
I mean,
Yes,
I've brought
yes.
your buddy Jim Golden out to meet with some of my clients to talk about this specific issue. So that
Bring us
he-
out too. We're
Jim
interested.
Golden? Who's Jim?
I'm sorry,
Tom
Tom
Golden.
Golden.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm looking right
Well,
at you.
the one that, just to lighten the mood a little bit, one of the great things about this district and the district that I represent is the fact that our unemployment rate here is about 4.9%. And a lot of that is driven, we talked about some of the high-tech work we've had on 110 and Chelmsford and Cronus, et cetera. And a lot of it has been the partnership we've had with Massachusetts, with the businesses here. I mean, because of specific targeted tax credits, because of infrastructure improvements, my district, we've retained and grown over probably about 2,500 jobs. And we've done well with it. There's always more work to do. Absolutely. But I think we're doing it right, and at least in this district, and the partnerships are working.
The one thing that Texas does right, the one thing is,
Chili. They do great chili.
yeah. Actually, no, I'm not a big fan. But they really focus on companies to retain those jobs. And not every state does that. And again, we
Point well taken.
I know a lot of this,
Yeah.
and they really focus on keeping those that they have. And I'm a big proponent of that. Keep ours and take theirs. And that's their mentality. And I like that. And I'd like to just see more of that in Massachusetts. And please don't be defensive. I'm a fan of yours.
Not at all.
I think you do a great job. But I think as a Commonwealth, and again, it's not rhetorical. This is, I
Right.
see it, I hear it, I talk to my clients about it. I think Massachusetts needs to do a little bit more of, how do we keep ours? Let's focus on that. And then the second step, now let's go get them back.
Right. And that's the reason I'm doing my job tour. I mean, essentially is to create and continue a dialogue,
Yep.
with business leaders and move forward.
But I think in the top office, I would love to see Democrat or Republican. I'd love to see the race really be talking about these kind of issues.
How do you like Chris Christie?
I like him a
we're
lot.
going to talk about that in the show. So
Oh, okay.
just a minute. A little bit later. But
What are you doing?
How dare you?
oh, no, it's okay. But before we do that, I wanted to, Jim, I think the senator talked about education.
Yeah.
And aren't you working on something about student debt in the
I am.
state
You
here?
know, I was appointed the subcommittee on student loan debt, and just a couple statistics to throw out there they're really shocking. Actually, is that during the Great Recession, so arguably 2003 to present, really, or we're kind of coming out of it now, but. It's the only, student loan debt is the only debt to increase during that period of time dramatically during the Great Recession. Number one. Number two, it's the second highest amount of debt that a family has next to their mortgage. And for individuals
And even
who,
that depends on the school you choose.
it certainly does. It certainly does. I mean, our tour that we're doing a tour across the state, crisscrossing the state, and we're trying to get our arms around this issue. Listening to not only students but administrators and chancellors to really get our arms around it and see how we can solve it. It's shocking when you think about it. And for the individuals who have debt, 65% of them, it's around $27,000. I know my wife changed her careers. She was a journalist before, and now she's in nursing school. So she's still paying for her journalism degree, or we are, and on top of that, her nursing degree as well. So it's something we need to get around, and some of the recommendations we've come up with, although they're the very beginning of them. One is, of course, prioritizing funding towards need-based financial aid. Also, it's looking at shortening the duration of time in which individuals get a 4-year degree. Oftentimes, credits don't transfer. Oftentimes, 2-year schools don't collaborate with 4-year schools. And how do you do that? Dual enrollment programs with specific niches in engineering and math and science, a lot of different institutions. So therefore, going into a 2- to a 4-year school, you're not taking unnecessary classes, you're not running up on the debt. And I think lastly, and something that you don't hear enough about, would be financial literacy. And it's understanding what kind of loan a family can afford, what kind of loan works for them, and really having a real discussion with your family and your guidance counselor about what kind of job you want to get.
Yes. Yeah.
So these are all topics that we're working on, and it's fascinating, but it's shocking too. You don't really understand the burden that student loan debt puts on families. It's tremendous.
I hate to see it when some people study something that isn't really that marketable once they get out, and they spend sometimes $100,000 or more, and they have this huge debt. They don't have a job, and if they studied, for example, culinary arts or something, and they end up going to a minimum wage job
Yes.
at a fast food restaurant, it is so sad, I think, to see what's happening to these individuals. But
And there's been a
it
couple of
just-
things. I mean, over the last, the last 10 years, when I was a staffer in the Senate Ways and Means Committee years ago, we worked on Higher Education Reform Center. We've had these discussions before. 2/3 of high school students go to public higher education. 2/3 of high school students go into public higher education. And then 85% of them are staying in the state. So we're really thinking about investing in the workforce of the future, investing in our kids.
Yeah.
And private or public school, this has become, student debt has become quite a burden, and it's very difficult to move forward.
Yes. Yeah.
And one thing we didn't talk about as well is the fact that there are a lot of online programs that exist out there.
Right.
And we need to get our arms around sort of the oversight of these as well, because
Yes,
some of these are not
definitely.
accredited. Some of these loan
Oh,
programs
yeah.
they have in these online, 3-credit classes, et cetera, they can put you into a loan that, for instance, can go up by
Yes.
14% on their
It's
interest
ridiculous.
rate.
Yes.
So we need to get our arms around all those,
Yeah,
all
I
those
hope you
topics.
do.
And so I'm
you
thinking and I
stay-
anticipate in the spring we're going to come out with some sort of a comprehensive reform.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you do, because there's a lot of people out there scamming everybody. Even on this new health care bill, I read that there's companies out there scamming elderly and others about saying that their government works calling these people up, getting their private information. All these scam artists are out there all the time, and we got to do whatever we can to protect people as best
I
we
mean,
can.
you're absolutely, the most debt is being run up by kids, by young people who aren't going to accredited public or private
Right.
four-year institutions,
Yeah.
but they are responding to for-profit blandishments on TV, taking courses often without a campus attached and no oversight.
Yes.
So
yeah.
it's one instance in which the private sector saw a vacuum,
Yes.
moved in, and certain important elements of it are really ripping people off.
Oh, yes.
Right.
It's sad. It's terrible.
On the other hand, here's the positive side. The esteem in which public higher ed is viewed in Massachusetts is rising, as it should. Everything from UMass Medical School to the founding of honors colleges at UMass Lowell and UMass Amherst have had a difference. And so kids are starting to recalibrate here whether they need to go to an exclusive private four-year institution that apparently doesn't produce outcomes commensurate with the higher tuition. So my own guess is the next 10 years, I'm not talking about the universities on the private side, but the private four-year liberal arts institution that doesn't deliver in terms of equipping kids for careers and jobs is going to be on the endangered list. I think there are going to be fewer private four-year colleges than there are today. I think they're going to go out of business because the felt need to matriculate at a private institution is abating a little bit.
Yes.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
Thank
even in
you.
the two-year schools we have in the community colleges, a community college and a workforce development bill that we worked on last year that was signed into law, essentially would have the community colleges teach to the jobs
Yes.
through certificate programs
Good.
or finding the niche market to get the folks in there and get them the necessary skills. Because I believe the
yes.
statistic was that there, if there's I think it's 115,000 people that are unemployed, there was something like 90,000 positions in healthcare and certificate program type of positions that could be filled currently that are unfilled
Yes.
because they don't have those specific skills.
Yeah, to help them get it would be wonderful with the community colleges or four-year colleges,
Right.
whatever. That sounds great. Well, last week we had a big election in the country
Right.
in New Jersey. And if you watch the Sunday morning talk shows, you saw Governor Christie of New Jersey on every one of them,
Sure.
except my show, of course, but that was because
Maybe.
it's local.
You have time. You have time.
He'll be on it.
Yeah.
Janet and I
Yeah.
actually went to Cambridge, 2 or 3 years ago and heard
At Harvard,
Couple
right?
years ago,
Was that at
yeah.
Harvard? Yeah, that's
I
right.
heard by Chris Christie give a speech. I thought it was one of the best political speeches I've ever heard. It was just outstanding. Not reading a word, really seemed to be connecting with the audience. And I think that's why he's being talked about as presidential timber, you might say, for 2016. So what happened in his election last week, he won by a landslide in what they call a blue state. There's about 700,000 more Democrats than
Right.
Republicans in New Jersey. he won by 22 points
Right.
over his credible challenger. She was a state senator. She wasn't a fly-by-night person. She was very involved in politics. And for him to win 22% in his re-election bid and to win 66% of independents, 32% of Democrats voted for him as a Republican.
Right.
51% of Hispanics, which is the largest demographic group growing in the country right now, is Hispanics, and 21% of African Americans when he only won 4% previously. So what happened was, right after that election, a lot of the talk shows were talking about Governor Christie. What do you think about him for 2016? And so, of course, he was asked that question on all the talk shows this past Sunday. And understandably, he said, I'm the governor of New Jersey. That's what I have to concentrate on right now. You wouldn't want him to say, even if he's thinking about 2016, oh, yeah, I'm going to run for president. So I heard Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC last night kind of say, oh, yeah, he's running for president, like being sarcastic about it. But he should understand, he has to say he's running, he's a governor of New Jersey. That's his job right now. And in maybe a year or two, when he has to make a decision in 2 years, then he could maybe say, okay, I think I'm going to run for president, et cetera. So anyway, what does this august body think about this? Because I know you all are very politically astute, and I wondered what you thought about Christie, Hillary Clinton, who right now is leading in the Democrats in all the polls, et cetera. Ted Cruz of Texas, Senator Ted Cruz. He seems to have an interest in running along with Senator Rand Paul. So what are your thoughts about Christie or any of these other people that I'd mentioned? Elizabeth Warren, by the way, is being mentioned as another alternative for Hillary Clinton. I saw a couple of recent articles about her being a very good potential candidate, either if Hillary doesn't run or if Elizabeth wants to run because of different positions that she might have from Hillary. I don't know if you read that lately, but anyway, what are your thoughts about, if you have any, about Chris Christie? You mentioned it earlier.
Coming from someone who hates Texas.
No, I love Texas. I spent a lot of time there doing voter registration work when I was young, although I spent most of my time in Austin, where the
Austin almost seems different from Texas, but
it's a little ahead of the rest of Texas. Yeah. But so I think we Democrats are creating, problems for ourselves. I am truly very disappointed at the screw-ups involving the healthcare website, just because those kinds of mistakes, which seem to be mistakes about basic competence in running government, do fuel an interest in Christie, who seems to be a can-do kind of person. Now, let it be said that Christie the press loves to build people up and then take them down. So Christie's,
and both sides are taking them down right now.
Right. So Christie's untested. The very thing that we all find intriguing about him is that he's unself-censored and uncensored, unfiltered. You're getting an authentic person.
Right.
That kind of person also self-destructs often under national scrutiny. So I don't know what Christie's ultimate, and he knows zip about foreign policy. So he's not the guy you want in the Middle East. That said, he's going to intrigue people because folks right now are upset at government's basic ability to do things, and I think we Democrats need to regret that we created this opening by not. I'm an IT guy. I've been in healthcare IT during the 18 years I've been out of public office.
So this must be especially intriguing for you with the website failure then.
Yeah, so it's not. So it's regrettable that it happened, and my objective view, and I'm going to defer to Jim and to Janet, is that we Democrats have a problem now, and
well, I think the whole country. I think the Republicans have a problem. I think each one of us.
I think Christie's going to have obviously he's a very interesting character. He's a very good governor. He overwhelmingly won his race. The way he handled, Hurricane Sandy, and obviously
143,000 private sector jobs during his first 4 years.
Obviously angered presidential candidates like Mitt Romney by giving President Obama a big hug.
Yeah.
But clearly he shows.
That was the right thing to do.
But clearly he shows he can work across the aisle.
Yeah.
Clearly people are yearning for somebody who can do that. But you know what? There isn't a national popular vote. There's a convention he'd have to go through.
Yes.
Do I ever see him getting out of the Republican convention? Absolutely not. I do not. He's not conservative enough. I don't see it. And I think Rudy Giuliani had these same kind of challenges. What may be popular on the national scene and popular with political pundits and popular with his constituents, I think it's going to be quite a challenge for him to be nominated by his party that's filled with extremists on both sides. Doesn't matter who it is. Moderates have that difficult time getting elected to the convention and to the party. So
Well,
I think that's his challenge. Do I
that's the
think
big
he'll be the
challenge.
nominee? I do not.
That's the big challenge. I agree with you, Jim. But if the Republicans do go with, say, an extreme right-wing, more ideologue like Ted Cruz, for example,
Sure.
or Rand Paul, I think they are going to have another losing election in 2016. Now, do they have enough foresight to see that? Many of them do throughout the country, not all of them. But will they have enough to get Chris Christie over the primaries, as you mentioned? I happen to think there's a good possibility he might make it this time because they're yearning to get
'Cause
back
they
into
wanna
the
win.
White House
Yeah.
after 8 years of a Democrat.
Right.
They want more, less government, you might say, more of these lower taxes, business incentives, create jobs that way, that kind of the Republican philosophy. They might say, yeah, Chris Christie's a moderate, but yet he's anti-abortion or anti-choice, you might say, or pro-life, I guess they call him. He's for lower business taxes. He lowered taxes many times in New Jersey. He's for reform of pensions of government workers. He did that in New Jersey, which was very difficult to get through. It was going to save millions of dollars. So I think he has some of the things that he's been doing as governor that might help him get over that huge hurdle that you mentioned, which is the Republican primaries coming up. So.
Right. I think it's going to be a challenge for him. I really do.
I agree. Yeah. Go ahead,
I don't
Jim.
know. We'll see. I mean, I think because of the Obamacare fallout right now, I mean, we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah.
But I think that is starting to swing that pendulum perhaps over enough to that other side where people start going over to the Republican side. They see a Chris Christie, somebody who I think, like you said, unfiltered, but he comes out, he tells the truth, he can believe what he's going to say, and I think people are really hungry for
It's
that.
refreshing.
It is refreshing
That's
because
one
we're
of the
not
thing-
getting that right now.
That's one of the things I like about him a lot. Not that I would necessarily vote for him. If he doesn't change his policy on gay marriage, for example, I probably wouldn't, because unfortunately he, isn't for gay marriage, and I just
Right.
don't
But
think
if he has
that's
any
right.
hope of winning the Republican nomination, he's got to be
He's
against
got to
it.
be that way.
Yeah.
So if I was
There
a
you go.
political strategist, I might say, yeah, continue that if you want. But then after you win the primaries, then like Dick Nixon did many other politicians, you move over towards the center afterwards. And maybe he would change his position about gay marriage after he won the primary. I don't know if that will happen, but I think that's a better way that he have a chance of winning the overall general election for the presidency.
Certainly.
Because the majority of people in this country now are in favor of gay
Right, but he
marriage.
can't
and
get there.
are sup-
That's the
Right,
problem.
yeah, I agree, yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So who do you
So-
see getting the being on the ticket for the Democrats? Do you see that being Hillary?
Well, the polls right now, I just read them all the time, where Hillary right now is the overwhelming favorite, like well over 60, 70%.
but she also
the point-
had that, and
had
then
that in
Barack
2008,
Obama came up
2007,
out of
yes.
nowhere almost
Yeah.
and
No,
took her over.
yeah, so people have to say, yeah, she could be very popular like she was in 2007, 2008, but can she run a campaign well enough to actually win? Did
Right.
she let Barack Obama beat her in the primaries back then? So that's why I've been reading about Elizabeth Warren somehow, or maybe stronger, but a lot of Democrats may want somebody like her who stands up to Wall Street, stands up for the middle class and the poor, maybe stronger than maybe even Hillary Clinton might. So maybe on their primaries, they might have somebody. Of course, I don't know if Elizabeth Warren would ever want it. I don't know that. And if Hillary throws her hat in the ring, I'm not so sure many Democrats would run against her right now.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Governor Patrick throw his hat in the ring for a vice presidential nomination before Elizabeth Warren.
Yep. Yeah, maybe for vice presidential, but that's about it, right? Not
I
presidential
think you run for
at all.
president to get vice president, don't you?
Yeah, so, but we have a
Is
few
that
minutes
really
left.
a consideration? Is
Well,
that
it's
the
been
talk?
a lot of national media, a lot of national media.
Well, yeah, or an Hispanic maybe too. I mean, for vice president too to help. You know
Certainly, certainly.
Because
I mean,
it's like I said, it's a big demographic group right now, or
Absolutely.
an African American, whatever. But we'll see. But I find it fascinating though.
Vice
So
President Biden will be throwing his hat in the ring, I assume.
Yeah.
I know which is a.
I think everybody will be.
I think people like him, again, for probably the same reason
Same
that
reasons.
they like Chris Christie.
Sure, it's true. Tells it like it
That'd
is.
be
Comes
quite a
across
race,
as
wouldn't it?
a-
A Biden, a Christie.
No, Janet, I'm sorry. I think they're totally different.
No,
people,
but it's
maybe likable people.
It's that
yes, if you say
unfiltered.
but-
It's the likable.
Well, he's
He
unfiltered.
Now,
says,
Chris Christie wouldn't call the wrong Marty Walsh, would he?
Yeah, no, right. No, Chris Christie, I like I said, very well may not vote for it, so I don't make this sound over complimentary, but I think he's a competent individual, a competent administrator. He can get things
But
done.
there's a reason you're drawn to him, right?
Yeah, because I think he could do these things, and I think he could communicate well. I'm sick of people being kind of unemotional in their political speeches. I heard that speech after the election that night, and I thought it was wonderful. I don't know if you've all listened to it that Tuesday night. I stayed up late, watched it, and I thought it was great. Then watched the commentary afterwards. And this guy really, I think, knows how to communicate with people. If you watch him on those Sunday morning shows, which you could still see on YouTube, you could see what he said this past Sunday. It was perfect, I thought, in terms of saying, no, let's not talk about the presidency. They asked him about Syria, about Iran and all that. He says, no,
because they're testing him on his.
Yeah, and I don't feel, and he was right though. He said, I feel I should not be talking about this right now. I'm not fully briefed on all these issues. I think it would do more harm than good. This isn't my place to talk about that. And he's absolutely right. And he resisted. They kept coming back. But so I think he could stick to his positions when he wants to.
It is refreshing to find somebody in his position acknowledging that he's not in fact omniscient. That
Well,
he doesn't
yeah,
know
he's not
everything
briefed
about it.
on that,
Yeah.
right? You know how they have
Instead
the
of
secret
saying
briefings.
something and
Yeah.
the press
And
has him
that's
on a
how-
gotcha, I like that.
Exactly. And so I think this guy, and I've seen him get angry sometimes, but that never bothered me a couple
Right.
times because I thought, yeah, if the guy's asking a stupid
Right.
question, maybe once in a while
Or
you can let him know.
inappropriate or something.
Inappropriate.
Well, it's
I
the
mean,
old
but-
Tip O'Neill. If I
Yeah.
don't know the answer, I'll find out from somebody who does.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, but basically, I'm sorry, our time is running short.
Sure.
And Jim, I know you have the Toys for Tots program.
I do. It's
coming up,
my
right?
third
The
annual Toys for
fundraiser?
Tots program that I co-host with the Lowell Sun and the actual Marines. And so we're in the Toys for Tots and the Lowell Sun Santa Fund, which we raise money for folks and families during the holidays that are having difficult times and struggling through the holidays to provide presents and all the things that
And
are happy
finances,
about
too.
holidays. And where it's going to be on December 5th at the Franco-American Club in Westford. WCAP will be live, and
again,
everybody
yeah.
here will get an invitation.
And it's
Last year we raised $13,000 for families, and then
$13,000.
probably close to a similar amount of that in presents.
It's
So-
great.
fantastic, Jim. I've been going every year for the
Yeah.
past, since you've been having them, and the turnout's been fantastic. And
Sure.
I think you're doing a great thing now for those who are struggling, you might say, to help them have a decent holiday is a wonderful thing, Jim. So thank you very much for doing that.
Looking forward
And I
to
hope
it.
to be there again this year.
It would be
if I'm
great. It
free.
will be a great time.
And also, we have something coming up for the Table of Plenty. I don't know if you heard about that at all. Table of Plenty is something that we have a sit-down dinner, every Tuesday nights, usually at the First Parish Church in Chelmsford, but it's not just sponsored by them. So different groups come in on Tuesday, and they come in, and about 40 to 60 people come in and get a nice hot meal. And you don't have to
No questions
No
asked.
questions asked. You don't have to be so you're poor or anything like that. Sometimes they might just come for socialization. And so anyway, they're going to have a fundraiser at Friendly's Ice Cream in Chelmsford on November 21st. It's a Thursday from 5 to 8 p.m. A fundraiser in the sense that you can go buy your meal, and 20% of that would go towards the Table of Plenty. So I just posted on the Chelmsford Reps and Residents group today. You can get the coupon there, or I could send you an email. If you send me the email, that's tcristiano@comcast.net. And so thank you. We also have the day before Thanksgiving walk again this year. Hopefully you guys could come.
Great.
200 to 300 people generally come to that. 2 o'clock at Janet Road entrance of Thanksgiving Forest, the day before Thanksgiving. Senator Barrett, thank you so much for being on
Happy
the
to be
show
here.
again. It's been fantastic. I think it's been one of my favorite shows, talking about national issues. And the way you all talked about it was really great. Thank you, Mike.
Happy to be
Senator, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Jim Arciero. Great job.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Janet.
Thank you.
Askenburg, great job as
Thank you.
usual. And thank you, this wonderful crew. We have George and Azora and Larry. Thank you very much. Our camera people, they always do a great job. And our director today, Matt Scott, the director of Chelmsford Telemedia, is here today with us. Thank you very much, Matt. And if you have any comments on the show, please send me an email at tcristiano@comcast.net. Ciao.